Hey there guys, me again. I wanted to give you a quick update about books because those are still a few of my favorite things, to quote one of my favorite movies. I wanted to talk about the top 5 books that I've read either in the beginning of this year or in the last few months of last year. First one is a book that I got in London by one of my favorite authors. It's The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. I was a little bit upset because while I was in London, Neil Gaiman was in the Netherlands. So I comforted myself by buying this book. It's a fairy tale-like feeling. It feels like a children's book, but it's also definitely not a children's. Don't want to give too much away, but it is about a guy looking back on his childhood, and it's really good at portraying the sort of magical feeling you can have when you're a kid. I read this one already twice, so if that's any indication, you should go for this one. The next book I want to talk about is actually 3 books. I got it at a book event in this town last year. It's the Merciful's trilogy. I got the Dutch edition, but it's by Maggie Stiefvater, and the English titles are Shiver, Linger and Forever. Surprisingly fun is the overall conclusion, because it is about sort of werewolves. At first I was like, but it is surprisingly original. It is clearly young adult fiction. It's not the most complicated story. Very enjoyable. Yes, it was one of the first books that I read in this house. I have some like nice memories attached to this one. The next book I wanted to talk about has less good memories attached to it. Let's start with that. It is a book by one of my favorite Dutch authors. It's zijn, en Namen van Tommy Wieringa. About a week after I moved here, I did something really stupid. I never had my own front door. Or usually when I just quickly went outside into the hallway, the door wouldn't just lock itself. But where I live now, it does. One day, I went to get some quick food at the supermarket, and I did grab a set of keys. They weren't, however, my house keys. So I came back. The options were kick in the door or go to my parents and pick up a spare set of keys. Problem is, my parents live 3 hours away from here. And I figured 5 hours in a train, let's find a way to entertain myself. So I comforted myself with buying this book, and boy, did I not regret that decision. It's set in the middle of the Caucasus, which is a region you don't hear a lot about, which already makes it interesting. But it follows both people in a city and a group of refugees. I don't know, it's difficult to describe, but it's such a beautiful book. It's very obvious that this guy is just such a good writer. The book hasn't been translated in English yet, but 2 of his previous ones were. This would be Caesarion, which has been translated in English as both Caesarion, surprise, and Little Caesar, which is literally the meaning of Caesarion. And his book before that was Joe Speedboat, and guess the English title of that book? It might be Joe Speedboat. It definitely is Joe Speedboat. While we're in the region of my favorite Dutch authors, there is another book I recently finished by one of them, and that is Vaslav by Arthur Japin. Arthur Japin is quite a well-known Dutch author. He also has a few books that are translated in English. One of my very favorite novels actually has been, it's this one. In English it's called In Lucia's Eyes, which is about Casanova's first love. This is a book about Vaslav Nijinsky, which was a real ballet dancer. What this book does really well is sort of describing different sorts of love, because Vaslav is a man which is really admired for his art, his abilities, and the book is told from the perspective of his wife, his servant who really looks up to him, but also his former lover slash the director of his old dance company, and sort of how they fight for his affection, but also the different forms of love you can have for someone. So both friendship, a romantic love, love as a project, love as a dream. So that is actually really cool. Then another English book. This is also a book I got while I was in London last year, because it was a little ridiculous. I went for 2 weeks, I brought like 3 books, and I think I came back with 11. The last book I wanted to talk about is this one, The Universe vs. Alex Wood by Gavin. Extence. I think it's his first novel. but it's a really good one. I really fell in love with the character of Alex Woods. It's from his perspective. He's a very sort of quirky boy who develops this wonderful friendship with an old guy living in this town. And it's also about friendship, it's about loss, it's about death, it's about Alex's complex situation and how people don't understand him and how he deals with that. And it's funny and sad and just really good. I also read this book in almost one sitting, not because I was stuck on a train, I was in my house, but I just didn't want to stop reading. So if that is not a recommendation, I don't know what is. And if you have any cool recommendations, as always, I am really interested in discovering new books. So please leave a comment telling me about nice things I should read. And I will see you next time. Bye!